Hi guys, it's me Chazzer HD and welcome back to a stream on this channel. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Hopefully the last few days you've all been, good. Hopefully you've all had a good time, and hopefully as well you enjoyed the Grand Prix that occurred a couple days ago in Spain. And of course in this stream tonight I'm going to get into reviewing the Spanish Grand Prix, not just the race but the weekend itself, and get into how all the teams and drivers did. And as well, I'll get into a couple bits of news coming from the weekend. And also, I will give you an update as to what the schedule will be for this weekend's Monaco Grand Prix. So make sure to stick around for that later on. And yeah, I've had an eventful last, couple days. Of course, I had my eye surgery about, how many hours ago? I'm not sure the exact amount of hours, but it was I think the exact time I had the surgery was probably about 9:15 on Sunday morning, UK time. And then all of Sunday, I was just, resting and recuperating, and was very, very tired because I stayed up all night. So I made sure I was awake for when, I had to be there for the surgery itself. And then, yeah, the last couple of days, in terms of recovery, have been good. My eyesight is improving quite a lot. It's not 100% there, but it isn't supposed to be that quickly. Probably in another 2 or 3 days, my eyesight will get to pretty much 100% vision, which I cannot wait for. And already, it's really, really good. So yeah, it was a great success. And it was just a brilliant experience at the end of the day. I have to admit, I was very, very anxious and very nervous because I've never had a surgery before. And of course, it's surgery on your eyes. Nobody likes people fiddling around with their eyes. Plus, I had to be awake during the surgery itself. And yeah, it went remarkably well considering what I thought it was probably going to be like. During the actual thing itself. Got to say, shout out to the surgeon who did it. I think it was called Dimitri. Pretty sure they said he was one of the best eye surgeons about, and he was amazing. He did, I think each eye took 5 minutes on, each eye. And the surgery itself, if you include, when he started the first eye until when it was finished, that includes like a 6-7 minute break in between. It was 20 minutes, 25 minutes, very, very short amount of time for such a big surgery and such a rare surgery as well. It's quite a rare operation, but it was a roaring success. And yeah, recovery, like I said, is going very, very well. And I think even they said, the people that did the checkups the day after, they even said that I've already, after about 24 hours, pretty much had 20/20 vision. So yeah, very, very good. Very, very happy. And cannot wait to move on now with the rest of my life with the vision that I do have and will have once I am fully recovered. Now, before we get into the Grand Prix, so I just need to update how I watched the Spanish Grand Prix. So I didn't watch it on the Sunday live. I couldn't. I wasn't allowed to look at any screens for 6 hours, and even after that 6-hour period, like 15, 16 hours after the surgery, looking at the screen was still pretty painful, very tense for me. My strength, I guess eye strength to light has improved a lot since, later on Sunday, where I was very sensitive to light. But yeah, I wasn't able to watch it live, and I wasn't really able to find an easy way to watch it live. So once I got back from the surgery and got home, I found, thankfully, a full broadcast online of the Grand Prix, and I watched all of it about, 2-3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. And I have to say, it was a pretty good Spanish Grand Prix. I missed a pretty good race. The first half of the race was as eventful as a Spanish Grand Prix is really going to get. Unusual, dramatic spins off track, a first lap collision, great racing between the top drivers, surprises, engine problems, all of that. Just, again, very, very exciting first half of the Grand Prix. The second half of the Grand Prix did taper off, but towards the end it did get good with Hamilton and Sainz, as we'll get onto in a moment. But yeah, just to update you guys, the surgery and everything all went very, very well. And yeah, hopefully in 2 or 3 days, once I'm all fully, not healed up, but fully, the vision is fully there, then I should be able to properly crack on. But I think what we should now do is pretty much crack on with this stream. So let's first get into the results of the Spanish Grand Prix itself. So Max Verstappen won his 3rd consecutive Grand Prix in the 2022 season. Sergio Perez finishing 2nd. That is Red Bull's second 1-2 in the last 3 races and second 1-2 of the season. George Russell finishing in 3rd. That's his 2nd podium of the year. Carlos Sainz finishing in 4th, and then Hamilton 5th. Bottas 6th, another great result for the Finn. And then Ocon 7th, Norris 8th, Alonso 9th. Great drive from Alonso, who started at the back. And then Tsunoda in 10th. And then after that, you got Vettel 11th, and then Ricardo, Gasly, Schumacher, Stroll, Latifi, Magnussen, Albon. And then your only 2 retirements, Zhou Guanyu, and very importantly for the championship, Charles Leclerc. So that is what the race results were for the Grand Prix. And given that there was no safety, there was no safety cars, I have to say it's very surprising that 8 cars were on the lead lap. Normally, if there's no safety cars around Spain, you only get like 4 or 5. So it does show that even at the moment, in 6 races into the season, is that the midfield is not as far away from the top teams as previous seasons. They are still pretty far away, as you can see with the timings there. But yeah, good to see that there's not too many, or as many, lapped as there would be in other years. But now let's get on to the teams, and we'll start with Ferrari. Now in qualifying, they got really, I would say, the best result they could. I don't think it was realistic to expect a 1-2 in qualifying. Carlos Sainz, yes, you could argue, could have took advantage better of Max Verstappen's DRS issue, which, of course, for Verstappen happened in the race as well. But with Sainz, I think 3rd was fine. I don't think, realistically, at the moment, especially given his form, I don't think you can expect Sainz to out-qualify Max Verstappen when it's still pretty close between the 2 teams. Charles Leclerc's lap in qualifying, by the way, absolutely fantastic, and it was exactly what was needed for the race. Of course, pole position, the record of the person who's on pole for the Spanish Grand Prix is very, very strong ever since we started racing here in 1991. And then, come to the race, we'll start with Charles Leclerc. Great start, held off Verstappen well, and then after Verstappen's mistake, which we'll get more into later on, just pulled away relentlessly. Of course, Verstappen being held up in traffic did help, but by the time we got to midway through the Grand Prix, but lap 28, 29, Leclerc was leading after he finally made his first pit stop, was leading by 12 seconds or so. And Charles Leclerc was going to win that race and was thoroughly deserving of winning that race. He made no mistakes. He was very quick. Pace was actually very surprising from the Ferrari, given we've seen issues with overheating tyres in the last couple races for them. So, yeah, it was looking so good for them. And then a power unit issue. Such a shame for Charles Leclerc, because he was driving as well as he possibly could. That was, peak Leclerc in the race on Sunday. For Ferrari, though, it's just, yet again, it's yet again a reason why I just don't think they'll win the championship this year, because when Ferrari, and we saw this, a few years ago, when, of course, Sebastian Vettel was the team leader, and they were going up against Mercedes in the championship fights in those couple of years in 2017 and 2018. When they came to a race, they absolutely had to take advantage of, their car being particularly quick around that track, whatever it was, or just a Grand Prix in general they had to win. Most times, they just couldn't do it. And this was a race, because Verstappen had won the last 2 races, closed the gap massively. and they had to hold the momentum, of course. Charles Leclerc had to win this race, and given that the Ferrari car was, I think, the best car for the circuit, like I said, they had to win the race. And of course, they didn't, and Max Verstappen eventually went on to win the race and take the lead of the Drivers' Championship, and Red Bull, of course, have took a big lead now in the Constructors' Championship, and again, it's another reason why I think Ferrari will not win the championship this year, because when they have to win those really key races in a season, they just cannot do it. Monaco this weekend is another race, for example, where they have to win. They absolutely have to win, and preferably with Charles Leclerc, so they can bounce back in both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships. We'll see if they do bounce back, but again, most of the time, this team doesn't tend to produce the results when they really need to. For Carlos Sainz, I'm sorry, he was absolute shit in the race. The mistake he made, yes, there was a crosswind, a gust of wind, whatever you want to call it, you know, going across, turn 4 there. Max Verstappen, of course, fell foul of that. And I'll, equally criticise them both. They shouldn't have been pushing as hard as they were into that corner, given the conditions. They were just pushing too hard in the conditions. And yeah, for Carlos Sainz, and I'll again repeat this for Max Verstappen in a moment, a silly mistake, and then obviously had to come back through the field, eventually got up to P4, which realistically, after that mistake, was the best result he was going to get. I have to say, though, his pace after that mistake was pretty poor. Didn't come through the field that quick, and before he made his final pit stop, was actually lapping slower or at the same speed than Valtteri Bottas, who at the time was in 4th place. And the only reason he beat Bottas is because Bottas, Alfa Romeo opted to stay out on a 2-stop. If Bottas was pitted by Alfa Romeo, I think Valtteri Bottas would have beaten Carlos Sainz in the Grand Prix, because he had the pace of the Ferrari there. And yeah, Carlos just has zero confidence. And the reason he has zero confidence is because of his own performances. It's not because the car is doing things that, he has no control of. It is simply because he is just making silly amateur mistakes. And because he's driving for Ferrari, if you make those mistakes with Ferrari, most drivers tend to crumble under that pressure. I mean, the last driver we saw like this was Sebastian Vettel, who in 2018 and then even in 2020 was making silly amateur mistakes. The 2020 car wasn't really suited to Sebastian's driving style, which I think played a lot into why Sebastian was spinning so much that season. But certainly in 2018, towards the end of that season, because Sebastian was making so many key silly mistakes, his confidence just fell to the floor, and that's exactly what you're seeing here with Carlos Sainz. Going into Monaco, do I see Sainz really getting a good enough result? No, I don't, because I think Monaco is a track where you've got to come in having confidence within yourself that you can go out there, attack the track, and get good results. Carlos Sainz hasn't got any confidence right now. So I would be surprised, honestly, if you saw him really strongly contending in the top 3. I think he's more likely to be around, 4th, 5th, to be honest. If he does finish on the podium, it's probably going to be because of mistakes from others or, reliability trouble. But I just don't think he has the confidence really this weekend to go and get a great result. But yeah, Ferrari, poor race result. Absolutely not what they needed. They had, like I said, to win in Spain. And now, coming to Monaco, I'll get more into it in my Monaco Grand Prix preview on Thursday night, but like I said, they have to win. If they don't win in Monaco, then with the tracks coming up after Monaco, it's going to be very hard for them to win the championship. Very, very hard indeed. Now we'll move on to Red Bull Racing, who have took their 3rd consecutive victory in the 2022 season. Max Verstappen has won every race that he has finished in this season. And it was a pretty dramatic race from his side of things. Normally in the races he's won this season, he has just been simply faultless and too good for any opposition that has tried to beat him. But in the race in Spain, it was luck definitely played a big role in why he won the race, but also some unusual factors, I guess, in the race. So, of course, at the start of the Grand Prix, we'll start with qualifying. So, going into the final running qualifying, he was in pole, and then he was unable to do a final lap because his DRS wouldn't open down the pit straight. And that cost him a chance of pole position. Would he have got pole? I don't think he would have, because I think Leclerc's final lap was too good, but he would have been definitely close to Charles Leclerc's pole position time. Then at the start, like I said, I was going to say, Verstappen just settled into second place, then eventually made the same mistake that Carlos Sainz did. Thankfully, did not go as far into the gravel or spend as much time on the gravel as Carlos did, meaning that he only lost a couple positions in the order. And then was sitting behind Russell and Perez of course was stuck behind Russell for a large part of the first stint of the race. Perez kept trying to pass but just couldn't get past. Russell's defense was very strong. Then Perez let him past, and then Verstappen was suffering with DRS problems, and then DRS problems again, and then decided Red Bull to pit Max and put him onto a 3-stop strategy and try and get him to just simply push for the rest of the race to get himself clear of Russell. And eventually, that's what he did do. When, Verstappen eventually got up to Russell when Verstappen was on soft tyres, eventually he overtook him pretty easily when Russell had stayed out. And then, Verstappen kept pushing, and then eventually the final stop, he came out ahead of them. I have to say, the racing between Verstappen and Russell, despite Max's DRS issue, was very impressive, especially Russell's re-overtake and then them going side by side through turn 3. Great to see them two racing like that, and it is something we could see a lot of in the next decade of Formula 1. And yeah, Max, like I said, came out ahead of Russell, and then he came up to the back of Perez, who was a lot slower and was on at the time, a 2-stop, and was on the medium tyre. And then Perez pretty much, he did let him go, let him pass in turn 4. And then, of course, Max Verstappen went on to win the race. Now, let's get into a couple little controversies I've seen online since the Grand Prix. So, one, yes, I do agree with what certain people are saying, and I think objectively you would have to agree with this. Max Verstappen did not deserve to win the race. He was not the best driver. If you look at all the drivers and how they performed, you'd have to say Charles Leclerc was the deserving winner. He was miles out front, very, very quick, no mistakes. The only reason he didn't win was because of his car failing him, not because of him. And of course, Max made a very important mistake at an important time, coming up towards the end of the first stint of the Grand Prix. And yeah, I have no problem saying at all that Max, he did not deserve to win the race. He was not the best driver, and he wasn't terrible in the race, but he definitely wasn't at his finest. Certainly wasn't as good as what we saw, for example, in Miami. And like I said, I'll say the same thing for Max with, the whole spin, similar to Sainz. Shouldn't be making that mistake, shouldn't be pushing that hard in those conditions. I mean, the drivers, they're very smart. They know when there is, wind or a bit extra wind in certain corners because they can feel it in the car. So they shouldn't be pushing too hard in the conditions at the end of the day. So, yeah, mistakes by those two, clear mistakes. And I think, if you were to criticize both of them for that, it would be absolutely fair. At the end of the day, it's not like, almost all of the grid was spinning at the same point. It was only them two because they were pushing, I think, pretty hard with their tyres. And then the second thing I saw was people moaning about, Sergio Perez letting him through twice and then Verstappen winning, and even Perez moaning about how it was done. Now, I can understand from Sergio Perez's point of view, him moaning about how, and if it is true that Red Bull said they would let him back through, when it came to, I think the first time Verstappen was let through. To be honest, though, if they did say that, I don't think that was the right thing to do, because Verstappen, when he passed Perez, or was let past, he was way quicker than Perez, so letting him back through would have been the wrong decision. Or actually, no, that wasn't for that, was it? That was for when he was behind Russell. I mean, for that, I think Perez, he had enough goes at trying to pass Russell. Couldn't pass him, so, let Max, the quicker driver, have a go. And the only reason, at the end of the day, Max did not pass Russell was not because the Red Bull wasn't that quick at that stage of the race. It was because Max didn't have DRS. If Max had had DRS, eventually, a lot sooner than he actually did, would have overtaken Russell on track and would have won a lot easier than he did in the end, and probably wouldn't have gone on to a 3-stop strategy. Probably would have stayed on a 2-stop, because I think the 3-stop was, it turned out in the end to be the better way, but I think certain drivers or certain teams were kind of forced into doing that, in having to take a risk to go and get a better result. But when it comes to that, I don't see a problem there. Like I said, Perez had the opportunities to pass Russell, couldn't pass him, so let Max through, let him have a go. And I think Max, given that he had his DRS problems, I think did pretty well despite that. And then, of course, eventually beat the pair of them. And then for the other times that Perez, let Max go, which was on, what was it, like just over midway through the Grand Prix, when Max, just after Max had made his second stop, Perez, I think, let him go. I don't see how that's a problem, because Max was clearly quicker and they were at the time on different strategies, and there's no reason as a team to hold each other up when you need, the person on the more stops to be let through, because the only thing that causes people who go for more stops in a race, the only thing that causes them to end up with a worse result than hoped is traffic. So there's no reason to keep Perez ahead. And then during the final stint for Max, when Perez let him through, I think into turn, was it turn 4? I think it was. I don't see, again, why people have a problem with this. Max was much quicker than Sergio Perez, way, way quicker, and there was no reason to let the two drivers fight. Sergio Perez, let's say they let him fight. If they didn't end up in a crash, Max would have just overtaken him anyway, because Max was much quicker. So what's the point in taking that risk of Max and Sergio having a crash when, you've got a possible 1-2 on your hands? There's no reason to take that risk. Plus, Max is the main man for the team in the Drivers' Championship. It is his team. He is the number 1 driver. We know this. And as well, Sergio Perez knows his place in the team. He is the number 2 driver. He knew exactly what he was getting himself into. So I don't really see any point of him complaining. But yeah, all in all, people complaining, team orders and all that rubbish. There is literally no problem here. What Red Bull did is precisely what I would have done, because at the end of the day, a goal in a race is to get the best result you can with the least amount of fuss, and that's exactly what they did. And I have no doubt as well that if Sergio was in Max's position, they would have asked Max to let him through, because there'd be no reason to keep Max ahead if Sergio was that much quicker than Max, like Max was against Perez. So it just made complete sense. And yeah, great result for Red Bull. 1-2 finish, and they're now I think 35 points clear in the Constructors' Championship. And to be honest, now that they've got that lead, I think it will be very hard for Ferrari to overcome that type of lead, because both drivers, despite Max's mistake in the race, both drivers, I think, are performing as a team better than Leclerc and Sainz. And I think, certainly, after we get done with this weekend's Grand Prix, I am pretty sure Red Bull in June and July, I'm pretty sure they're going to have some very good results at the tracks we are going to. So I think in the Constructors' Championship, I wouldn't be surprised if Red Bull were not to relinquish the lead again for the rest of the season. And of course, like I've already said, Max is now leading the Drivers' Championship by 6 points. And yeah, going into Monaco, I don't think he is the favourite. I think you would have to say Leclerc and Ferrari are the favourite. I think Ferrari have the best car for qualifying there. And of course, if you get pole at Monaco, your chances of winning are like 85-90%. So I think Leclerc, as long as he doesn't do what he did last year and get pole and then break his car, then I think it should be a Leclerc and Ferrari victory. But if Red Bull can set their car up well for qualifying and Max can bang in a very, very good lap and even an amazing, great, all-time great lap to get pole, then I would be very surprised if anyone was to beat him. To be honest, if you get pole at Monaco, I think it's a surprise if anyone other than the pole man ends up winning the race itself. So yeah, if Max can get pole, then he wins the race, of course. And what I am trying to say is because of the tracks following up from Monaco, if Max does win in Monaco, I think there is a very high chance that by the time we get to the summer break, Max is leading by 30 or 40 points in the championship. Very high chance. And the reason I say that is because Baku, which is the next race after Monaco, will suit Red Bull with the long straights. Same with Canada. Same with the Red Bull Ring. Same with Silverstone to a certain extent. Paul Ricard, yes, also to a certain extent. The only races really Ferrari I think will be very strong will probably be Hungary, Paul Ricard, certainly in the first and third sector, and maybe Silverstone, especially if it is very hot at Silverstone. But those tracks, I think the majority of them will probably play very well into Red Bull's hands. So, yeah, in terms of the championship, before we get onto the Mercedes team and how they got on in the Grand Prix weekend, this weekend's Grand Prix is a critical moment. I think it could set the momentum, really, for either Ferrari or Red Bull from now until at least, say, the British Grand Prix, which is in about 7 weeks from now, I think, the British Grand Prix. So it is a critical Grand Prix for both sides. Hopefully, we get an amazing fight for pole position between Leclerc and Verstappen, and hopefully a very close fight during the race as well between the two teams and two drivers. Now, let's go on to the Mercedes team, and it was a better weekend than they've had, really, so far this season. Mercedes brought a floor upgrade, a big floor upgrade, the upgrade they've been waiting for really since the start of the season. And Mercedes, I think, definitely took a step forward in the Spanish Grand Prix weekend. Their car was pretty much half a second closer to the front two teams, which is exactly what they needed in the coming from that upgrade. They needed to close in by realistically half a second. I mean, if they closed in any more, that would have been one of the best upgrades to a car we've seen in recent times, to be honest. But yeah, a half a second closer they are, and we saw in qualifying they were able to get in there and be around Sainz and Perez in the two slower drivers in the Ferrari and Red Bull teams respectively. Russell qualified in 4th, Hamilton 6th. I think Hamilton probably was disappointed with 6th because I think he probably could have got certainly a position better than that. I don't think maybe quite executed the proper lap in qualifying. But coming to the race, Carlos Sainz, of course, had a poor start to the Grand Prix that allowed Russell up to 3rd. We'll start with Russell before we get to Hamilton. And yeah, Russell got up to 3rd. And then, up until Max Verstappen spin, had Sergio Perez all over the back of him, trying to find a way past. Then Verstappen spun. Perez then eventually let Verstappen through because Perez just simply could not get past Mr. Saturday, George Russell. And then Verstappen tried, but he didn't have DRS. He did, in this moment, as you can see, briefly, when he did have DRS, go down the inside, but Russell brilliantly went round the outside and then held his line superbly through the middle of turn 3 to keep Verstappen at bay. Eventually, though, through Max going on to a different strategy and going for an extra pit stop, he got past, and eventually Sergio Perez did as well, and realistically that was always going to happen. Mercedes have closed the gap, there is no doubt about it, but they are not yet quick enough to beat Red Bull and Ferrari in a race. They're not at that point yet. I know people will point to Lewis Hamilton's pace, but there are reasons for that, as I'll get onto in a moment. But yeah, Russell, fantastic race, fantastic drive from him. If he was in a Red Bull or Ferrari, I think he probably would have won the race, because he was performing at his absolute peak of what he can do. Brilliant from Russell, and his amazing season continues. And of course, I have to mention that Mercedes did have a water leak with both cars towards the end. And thankfully for them, they both got to the end, because if they both had to retire, then that would have been a really bad end to what was a pretty good result, considering what happened in the race, to be honest. But yeah, going now on to Lewis Hamilton. I feel sorry for Hamilton, because, I mean, the start of the race, he tried to get past Carlos Sainz at turn 3. If you go look at the replay from his onboard, he was going to get past Sainz, and then he had a little moment a little moment on the rear end, right in the middle of turn 3, and that allowed Sainz then to get the momentum around the outside to then, pull around the outside and be clearly ahead into turn 4. Then, because Lewis Hamilton was on the inside going into turn 4, that gives whoever was on the racing line on the outside a lot of momentum to then swoop around the outside. Kevin Magnussen tried to do that and ended up driving into Hamilton's front left tyre, causing a puncture for Hamilton and, of course, damage for Kevin Magnussen. Such a shame, because Hamilton was looking very aggressive and looking very good at that start. And also, he was on an alternate strategy, because he decided to start on the medium compound tyre when the rest of the front runners are on the soft. So it would have been interesting to see what he could have done on that compound. Then, of course, he went to the back, and he was like a minute behind, and we didn't really see him start to progress, I think, until his second pit stop, until his second pit stop really was when he started to really show some good pace. Now, Lewis Hamilton is my driver of the day for the race on Sunday. I don't think there could be any doubt about that. Lewis was incredible with how he came back through the field and wasn't even that far off a podium before the water leak that happened. He was only like 12 seconds or so behind Russell before he had to back off the water leak. That, of course, Russell had to as well, but Hamilton, I think his water leak was somehow worse by the looks of it than Russell's. But one thing I do need to point out is that if you look at Hamilton's pace from his second pit stop on, his second pit stop was, when was it? It was between lap 20 and 25, maybe just slightly later than lap 25. But the reason he was so quick compared to everybody else was because from lap 25, or whenever his second pit stop was, until the end, he was always on fresher tyres, much fresher tyres than everyone else, which is why he was so quick, and it's why he came through the field so quickly as well. So we do have to remember that in terms of looking at his pace and trying to make of it what we will. We have to remember that he did have a massive advantage of having fresher tyres than everyone else for about 40 laps of the race, which massively helped his pace. But I will say the Mercedes race pace was good compared to what we've seen so far this season, and it did show that they are, yes, half a second a lap at worst at the minute after this upgrade. They're half a second a lap off the pace of the very front team if it's Ferrari or Red Bull. And that is a massive upgrade on what it was, in Miami and before, where it was basically a second per lap. So it is good, or looking good, for Mercedes on that front. One last thing I guess I could say with Hamilton is, it's not really to do with Lewis Hamilton, it's more to do with Kevin Magnussen, with that incident. I do think it's a racing incident, because if you look at it, I think Magnussen, he's turning right. Of course, it's a right-hander. He has to turn right, and he does have the right to try and go around the outside. And Hamilton, he did understeer slightly, but it was only slight. It wasn't like a clear understeered wide and just slammed Magnussen right off the track. It wasn't anything like that. So I don't think there was any cause for a penalty for one or the other. But I will just say, or not even just say, I would love to ask Kevin Magnussen why he thought trying to overtake Lewis Hamilton was a good idea. Not because you shouldn't be overtaking him. If you want to overtake him, you can. But Lewis is in a much faster car, and he would have passed you about 4 laps later, despite you overtaking him. So there was no real point for Kevin to try and overtake him, because he was going to lose that position, like I said, in 3 or 4 laps anyway, because the Mercedes was, at least a second a lap quicker than the Haas car. So I just don't see what the point was in Magnussen trying to overtake him. I mean, again, the actual incident itself, for me, there's no clear blame that can be attributed. But in hindsight, Magnussen shouldn't have bothered. He should have thought, well, am I realistically going to be fighting with Hamilton today? No, there's no real point. Let me just try and position myself as best as I can, and as close as I can to him, but not really overtake him, because, again, realistically, there's no real chance of me beating him in the race, and I should probably focus on trying to keep my teammate and Valtteri Bottas behind, rather than trying to overtake a much quicker car at the start of a race. So yeah, I think that's an unusual decision, I guess you could say, from Magnussen on that. But yeah, Mercedes, they have clearly massively improved their car. There is no doubt about that. And I think going into Monaco, because it's going to be a track that I think will suit them even more, it won't suit them totally. It won't bring them much closer to Ferrari and Red Bull, because if you look at the final sector data from Barcelona, that is a good indication to what the pace could be at Monaco. In the final sector in Barcelona in qualifying, Mercedes were pretty slow. Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo was like 0.3 of a second quicker than both Hamilton and Russell. So in the final sector, where those slow corners are, the Mercedes not handling that well. But in the fast corners, and even on the straights, the Mercedes works car looked pretty good. The Mercedes customer teams down the straights were still pretty poor, which I think points to, again, the upgrade that Mercedes brought in Miami that trimmed off a bit of drag with the, I think, the front and rear wing that they brought there in Miami. So Mercedes have made an improvement on that. But of course, in Monaco, straight line speed is not important at all. So at Monaco, because as well it's a shorter lap, I think they'll be closer to pole position in Monaco. How close will they be? 3 or 4 tenths of a second, I would say, away from pole. I think there's a good chance they could end up getting third in qualifying. I would be very surprised if they could get on the front row. Very, very surprised indeed. It would have to be a perfect, or as close to perfect, lap as possible from one of the two drivers, which we know, because of the quality of the two drivers, it is possible. So we'll see what they can do in Monaco. And certainly with the car being a lot better and the porpoising pretty much gone and now understood as to why it was happening from the team, I think, yeah, they'll be good to a certain extent in Monaco. Not good enough to win, but definitely good enough for a podium finish. And hopefully, for Lewis Hamilton, from his point of view, if he wants to beat Russell and really start to, get back at him, then out-qualifying Russell is very, very important indeed. Lewis still doesn't seem to have, 100% confidence in the car that, say, Russell does, but I think after the race in Spain, Lewis will definitely be feeling a lot more confident in, what he has compared to what he was feeling like after Imola, which was just, sorrow and despair pretty much with what he had. But yeah, in Monaco for Mercedes, I think probably 3 or 4 tenths of a second they'll be away from pole, which is not too bad, to be honest, considering where they were before the Spanish Grand Prix. So we'll see what they can do in Monaco. Hopefully they can get a podium or be in contention at least for that. Now we'll go on to McLaren, final team, before I come to you guys in the chat room. Make sure you keep your comments coming, by the way, in the live chat. I'll read it out in a few minutes' time. We'll get on to McLaren now. They brought McLaren the most upgrades at the Spanish Grand Prix. They brought 10 upgrades, pretty much a new car, to the Spanish Grand Prix, but it ended up not really improving those upgrades, not really improving their car, because they were pretty much in Spain as quick as they were in Miami, with Norris in the top 10, good enough for like an 8th or a 9th, and then Ricardo outside of the... Oh no, Norris was outside of the top 10, wasn't he? In qualifying, and then Ricardo was in the top 10. But the positions were, at best for McLaren, very similar to, what it was like in Miami. Then the race came, and I have to say, big up to Lando Norris for his performance to finish in 8th place with tonsillitis. I know people will say, oh, it's only tonsillitis. Trust me, I've had tonsillitis many times in my life. I get tonsillitis like 3-4 times a year. I always get it. And the bad bouts of tonsillitis I've had, I mean, I can't even imagine going outside and doing something properly with a bad bout of tonsillitis. So for him to have that and to, do the race 66 laps and finish in 8th place, again, big up to him. Great performance by Lando Norris. Daniel Ricciardo, qualifying was surprisingly good, actually. It was a lot better than I thought it would be. I thought he would be realistically knocked out in Q2, at best in like 12th place or something. But yeah, 9th place, good result. But then in the race, he had absolutely no pace. And honestly, I thought he was pretty poor in the Sunday race. His pace was just not there at all. And also, we got another clear indication in the race, certainly in the first 20 laps or so, that this McLaren car is too draggy. It's slow in a straight line. We know the Mercedes power unit isn't quite there. It's not. It's still not that great of a power unit. But again, Mercedes, they've improved their straight line speed through cutting off drag rather than improving the power unit itself. But McLaren, they just simply have too much drag on their car, because in Miami they were at the bottom of the speed traps, and in Spain they were in the bottom of the speed traps, and we saw in the race on Sunday in the first 20-25 laps the McLarens were getting overtaken left, right and centre. So Monaco this weekend should be a blessing for them, because if they can get a decent qualifying, then they should be able to at least finish where they qualify. But for the rest of the season, I've got to say, doesn't bode well. Not just that, but, bringing all of those upgrades and then not really improving from where they were in Miami, or even being as good as they were at Imola, where they were very, very quick, probably had the 3rd quickest car at Imola. They've not really been anywhere near that since then. And obviously that race was about a month ago. So, yeah, honestly, for McLaren, I'm in a bit of fear for them that I think they could really start to drop down the order, say in the Constructors' Championship after the Monaco Grand Prix. I mean, I think with Lando Norris, if he is healed up with his tonsillitis and that, which he should be, because tonsillitis doesn't tend to linger around that long, he should be fine, and he will most likely be finishing probably in the top 7 or top 8. He was amazing last year, finishing third in a McLaren car that was probably the fourth quickest car last year at the Monaco Grand Prix. So, yeah, I think Lando will be fine. 7th or 8th, probably, with him. And then Ricardo, I mean, you would hope that Ricardo, because of how good he's been in the past at Monaco, would be in the top 10. But we saw last year, didn't we? We saw last year, he was pretty poor. So we'll have to just see what he does. I'm expecting him to be certainly a lot better than he was last year. And should be, I think, around 9th or 10th. I think that's pretty much where he should be aiming for, considering the speed of the McLaren at the moment. But like I said, after this Monaco Grand Prix, because of their lack of straight line speed, and I mean, from an aerodynamic point of view, they've not got a ton going for them. I just don't see how they can hold on to 4th unless they bring some sort of upgrade that just, brings them a step forward ahead of the pack behind them, and maybe a step closer to the front teams. If they can't bring an upgrade like that, then I don't see how this team, like I said, finishes in 4th, because Alfa Romeo and Alpine behind them are looking just quicker teams. Alfa Romeo especially. If Zhou Guanyu can get some results going, then Alfa Romeo are going to be overtaking McLaren in the championship very, very soon. So, yeah, not good days, I think, are ahead for McLaren, which is sad because, of course, last year and 2020, 2019 were good years. But I think this year, I think you're going to see McLaren drop out of the top 4 of the championship, because I just don't think there's enough of a car here to finish in those positions. I think the only way they will is either, again, a good enough upgrade that puts them a step ahead, or Lando Norris being a great driver, which he was, of course, last year. And if he can continue doing it, then it will help McLaren massively. Yeah, not great for McLaren at the minute. But before we get on to the rest of the teams and how they got on at the Spanish Grand Prix, guys, let me know in the chat. Let me know what you thought of what I've had to say so far. And just, continue to post your comments in chat. And I'll make sure to read out as many as I can before moving on with the rest of this stream. If you are new to the channel, by the way, don't forget to subscribe. Bottom right of the screen. You can do it right there. I will be live for plenty, and I mean plenty of content from Thursday through to Monday for the Monaco Grand Prix this weekend. So don't worry, there's plenty coming your way in terms of content. And as well, don't forget to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5 for more content like this. But I'll just read out some comments quick, I think. I'll try my best to read them. Obviously, my eyesight isn't 100%, so I'll try my best. Rooksfoot, great to see you, by the way, says, hopefully he got his bad luck out of the way before Monaco. Want to see him win there at least once in his career. Talking about Leclerc. He definitely is good enough to win around Monaco. He just needs to keep it mistake free. I mean, people say, "Oh, he has bad luck at Monaco." He doesn't. He doesn't have bad luck at all. The last 2 races at Monaco, he retired from them because of his own fault. So, yeah, it's up to him at the end of the day. Just needs a mistake-free weekend. Of course, at Monaco, you can't afford to do what he did in Q1. Not in Q1, in Q3, where he spun. I mean, if he was to do that this weekend, then he would probably end up in the wall and would end up starting in P10. Evening, Chaz. Glad to hear surgery went well, mate. Thank you, McLaren F1 race. Josiah says Ferrari are bottle jobs. Mercedes are going to start winning races soon. And then what? I don't think Mercedes are going to start winning soon. I mean, they're half a second, I would say, away at the minute. They need another upgrade to get to that point where they can win races. They need one more upgrade that puts them another quarter of a second closer, I reckon, and then they'll be close enough to win. Because the thing is, with their two drivers, and this is a great thing for Mercedes, is because they don't necessarily need to have the fastest car to win a race, because their two drivers are good enough that if their car is, say, even the second best car, their drivers can still make that difference to get them on pole or win the race if it's close enough to the quickest car, which is what I'm saying. If they can get to, say, a quarter of a second at most away from Ferrari or Red Bull or whoever's the quickest team, which I think will be probably Red Bull, then they'll be able to win races, but they're not at that point yet. Maybe they'll be kind of there for this weekend in Monaco, but if they don't get pole, they're not going to win the race, realistically, unless we get rain or some safety car craziness or something like that. But yeah, one more upgrade to get them that extra quarter second, and I think they can get there, absolutely. I am hearing or seeing on Twitter that apparently there's another upgrade coming at Silverstone for Mercedes, which could be that upgrade that gets them close enough to win races. Because at the moment, I'd say they're probably close enough to get a podium. Still, though, in the right circumstances, they have to get a podium. They can't get it on pure pace, I don't think. Because, I mean, if Leclerc had finished the race on Sunday, then Russell wouldn't have finished on the podium, would have finished in 4th place. So they're still not quite that quick. But yeah, just one more upgrade that goes well for them, and I think they'll be absolutely there with Ferrari and Red Bull. Max did a great job except for the turn 4 mistake. I mean, he still did a good race. It just wasn't anywhere near as good as his other races this season, where he has finished, of course, which have been pretty much faultless. Let's find some other comments here, if I can. Some discussion going on in the chat. KH asks, could Russell get a podium in Monaco? Given his current form, yes, absolutely he could. He'll be in contention for sure. What I think it'll be is Leclerc and Verstappen will be fighting for the win. And then for the podium, it'll be Russell, I was going to say Norris for some reason. Russell, Bottas, not Bottas. Russell, Sainz, Perez, Hamilton. Maybe, though, Valtteri Bottas, for a reason I'll get onto in a moment, because the Alfa Romeo, like I was saying a moment ago, Mercedes, the final sector here in Barcelona, being good in that final sector does tend to bode very well for Monaco. Valtteri Bottas' final sector was one of the best out there. So I think in qualifying you could see Bottas really cause a big surprise. But yeah, you know what, I'll say Bottas at the back of that pack, but yeah, most likely Russell, Sainz, Perez, Hamilton, with Bottas an outside dark horse. I think Merck will keep the no pods, even though Lewis had to watch his temps last few laps. Got to be better for less drag. Hello to Ronan Brady, by the way, in chat. Is Ferrari screwed with the current power unit situation? No, I don't think they are. I think they'll be... I mean, yeah, obviously very bad to have the reliability failure that they did have, but everyone has them during the season. Leclerc's had his one now. We'll see what happens on the reliability side for Ferrari, coming after this. I mean, of course, he had this reliability problem with the second power unit that Ferrari have brought this season. They brought it at the Miami Grand Prix, I think, for Leclerc. So, we'll see what happens on that front. But unless Ferrari continue to have other reliability problems, then I don't see it becoming a problem. Because like I said, everyone has a reliability issue or two during a season. Ronan Brady also says, I was in Monaco last week, took some circuit pictures. That's nice. Josiah says, I love Danny, but he's just not cutting it anymore. Yeah, I have to agree. I wouldn't say he's fully washed, as some people would say, washed up. But he's nowhere near where he was, is he? And McLaren F1 Race says, I think Merc have half a chance of victory in Monaco. They are the fastest cars at low speed corners. Maybe my take, Chazza. Nah, I don't think that's the case, because the data from Barcelona suggests that in the slow corners they're actually weaker, quite a bit weaker than Ferrari and Red Bull are. So I think first sector, Mercedes will be pretty quick. Second sector, pretty much level, maybe slightly behind the Ferrari and Red Bull. And then the final sector, I think you'll see Mercedes drop a couple tenths, and that will be the difference, really, between Mercedes and Ferrari and Red Bull. Or certainly, Leclerc and Verstappen in the Ferrari and Red Bull, respectively. But if they can improve, their slow corner speed already for this weekend in Monaco, then you never know. They could get a very good qualifying result. But I think realistically, I think the aim has got to be probably third for qualifying, and then say a podium for the race. We'll see what happens for them in Monaco. But I think I'll now move on to the rest of the team. So we'll go on to Alpine next. Qualifying was very poor for the team. Esteban Ocon ended up, I think, in P12. I was complaining that the car just wasn't right. The grip just wasn't there with the Alpine. And then for Fernando Alonso, was blocked quite bad towards the end of his outlap for his final lap. But I think he also may have got it wrong, or the team may have got it wrong in terms of where he was positioned on the track to get his lap started. But yeah, Alpine just did not have any qualifying pace. But in the race, they were incredibly quick. Ocon flew his way up the order and up behind Valtteri Bottas, and eventually wouldn't be able to pass Bottas because the Alfa Romeo is the quicker car. But yeah, great result for Ocon, finishing in 7th. That is pretty much the best I think he could have hoped for the race. And then Fernando Alonso is probably the second best driver from the race in Barcelona. Of course, starting at the back with a fresh power unit and all. The reason they took a fresh power unit and all is because he would have had to have gone to a new one pretty soon because of the couple little engine problems he's had so far this season. Yeah, they took the new one, and it paid off because he finished up in 9th place and made light work of some of the drivers in the bottom half of the order. So, yeah, great from Fernando and great for the Alpine team. How many points? 8 points from the Grand Prix. That's pretty much what you would hope for in points from a Grand Prix for Alpine. I mean, any more than 10 points is probably a bit unrealistic, to be honest. But 8 points is pretty much where you would expect to, or hope to be, if you're going to be a team fighting on the top 5 of the Constructors' Championship. So yeah, looking good for Alpine. The thing is, though, their race pace Alpine tends to be pretty good at the minute, but of course in Monaco they won't be able to really utilise that, because if they have another poor qualifying session, they probably won't do what they did in Spain and, come through the field and end up finishing in the points or anything. So I would honestly be surprised if they got that good of a result in Monaco. I think most likely you could see an Alpine maybe just about sneak into 9th or 10th place, but I'd be very surprised if they could get any higher than that in the race, because, again, their qualifying efforts at the moment don't seem to be that great. Their race pace seems to be a lot better than quali pace. Plus, Monaco, the Monaco track, I just don't think suits their car as well as others. So I don't think Alpine will be particularly great in Monaco, but hopefully, if they aren't that great, hopefully the two teams ahead of them, Alfa Romeo and McLaren, don't pull away too much in the championship. Now, going on to Alfa Romeo, Very good race for Valtteri Bottas, finishing in 6th place. He did exactly what the team wanted him to do, finishing ahead and pretty much first of the midfield runners. He could have finished in 4th place if Alfa Romeo had opted for a 3-stop at the right time, but it wasn't to be. The team decided to go for a 2-stop, and he ended up finishing in 6th, falling away quite badly towards the end. But at least he finished in the top 6. That is still a very good result for him and the team. Of course, Bottas is 8th in the Drivers' Championship, very close to Norris ahead in the Drivers' Championship. And Alfa Romeo now only 11 points behind McLaren for 4th. And given this Alfa Romeo car and how it's looking at the minute on pace, I think Bottas has got to be, a possible dark horse for say this weekend's Grand Prix for a surprising, say, top 5 finish. I think you have to put him in there because the Alfa Romeo car, certainly in the tighter, twistier sections of the Barcelona track, was very, very good. And like I said, in the final sector in Barcelona, Bottas was 0.3 of a second quicker than both Mercedes drivers. So if they can replicate that type of low speed, slow speed, if they can maintain that type of speed in the slow corners, that's what I'm trying to say, then they should be pretty competitive in Monaco, because of course you have the first half of the second sector is pretty slow, and then the final sector is pretty slow as well. So I would be very surprised if Valtteri Bottas was not, say, at least 8th in qualifying. And I think realistically in the race, he'll probably finish in the top 7 in Monaco. And as long as he beats whoever, beats the McLaren drivers, then I think that's really going to be a good result for him. If he can produce an absolutely stonking qualifying lap, which we know he can do, we've seen it in the past, and we have seen it a couple times in Monaco, him produce some good qualifying laps, then you never know, he could end up nabbing a position off a Mercedes or a Red Bull or a Mercedes or a Ferrari. You never know, it could happen. And if there is accidents for one of the top drivers, then of course Valtteri, if he keeps it together and shows the speed he has shown this season, then I think he'll definitely be scoring some good points. For Zhou Guanyu in Barcelona, I mean, before the Barcelona Grand Prix, my thought of him was, he's not been great, but he has had some bad luck. Bahrain, of course, he finished in the points. Then Saudi, he wasn't great. I will admit that. Then in Australia, his pace wasn't too bad. Was unlucky not to finish in the points, because I think he did finish in P11. And then Imola, I thought he was a bit unlucky because of the crash he had in the sprint race with Gasly. Because if you look at his pace, it was as good. Well, not as good as Bottas's, but it was good enough to be in the points. So I thought he was unlucky to be starting so far back, to be honest. And then, Miami, I thought he was also kind of unlucky because he didn't have that good of a qualifying, but he had a good start and his pace looked pretty good. And wasn't too far off of what Valtteri Bottas was showing in the second Alfa Romeo that was up in 5th place at the time of the race, but then had a reliability problem, did Zhou Guanyu. But yeah, this weekend, or not this weekend, but last weekend in Barcelona, he was pretty bad, I have to admit. What was he, 15th in qualifying, and then in the race he didn't really move anywhere, and then eventually just pulled into the pits and had a retirement. Probably the second race, I would say, this season where he's been, say, poor or underwhelming. I think the only other race you could probably say is Saudi. I think the other races, I don't think he was actually that bad, but yeah, not great from him. It was a shame also because, he's raced around Barcelona and driven around the track plenty. who shouldn't really have the excuse of not having the experience around the track. And yeah, the same goes for Monaco. Doesn't have that excuse, I'm afraid. Hopefully, shows better pace. Alfa Romeo, they need Zhou Guanyu to improve and to at least be, a couple positions, maybe 3 positions at worst, behind Bottas. Because Bottas at the moment is getting 5th, 6th, 7th. So if Zhou Guanyu can be 2 or 3 positions off, then he'll finish, sometimes in the points, getting a couple points here and there. And that will be very important for Alfa Romeo in the Constructors' Championship. Because if you look at the way things are right now, Alfa Romeo really should finish 4th in the championship with the car they have. If they had a better driver in that second car, if they had Antonio Giovinazzi, for example, then I think Alfa Romeo would be very, very close to McLaren right now, probably only 2 or 3 points away, to be honest. But yeah, hopefully Zhou Guanyu can show some improvement. And for Valtteri Bottas, like I said, I think he'll be pretty good in Monaco. But we'll see if they can continue to produce that good pace in Monaco. By the way, they also, Alfa Romeo, brought a lot of upgrades to the race in Barcelona. I think it was the 3rd or 4th most upgrades, and the estimate from Automotor and Sport, one of the main publications that, reports Formula One, one of the best out there, maybe the best out there, in fact. They estimate that their upgrades have given them an extra half a second. So the pace is there. It's just there for, the 2 drivers to get the pace out of it. And Bottas is. Zhou Guanyu, unfortunately, is not. Now let's move on to Haas F1. And qualifying was very, very good. What was it? 8th and 10th for Magnussen and Schumacher. I mean, we'll start with Kevin Magnussen quickly. Yeah, qualifying, I thought K-Mag did the best he could. Was his usual great self. He's always been pretty good in Barcelona. Then did what he did in the race. Again, I don't understand why he tried to overtake Hamilton when he realistically wasn't going to be racing him, but he still had the right to try. Make of it what you will. And then, of course, because he lost so much time having to pit and was at the back, ended up finishing quite low down. For Mick Schumacher, it was a shame because he had a great start and then ended up dropping back a lot in that first stint. And eventually, because I think of a late pit stop, because he did try to stay out on a 2-stop, or actually I think it was a 1-stop race, tried to get some points, but his tyres were just completely gone at that point. So that's why he ended up not finishing in the points. But I have to say, with Mick Schumacher, again, disappointing, but I don't think it's as disappointing as Miami, because I think that there is other circumstances as to why he didn't finish in the points. For example, the strategy was poor. I don't know why Haas thought they could do a 1-stop race and pit before lap 30 for their only pit stop. I don't understand the thinking there. It was going to be at least a 2-stop race. Anyone trying a 1-stop race was going to end up finishing way lower than they realistically would be hoping to finish. I don't understand what that strategy call was. And then also the Haas race pace we've seen this season is pretty poor. So yeah, disappointing. But again, with Mick, could he have done better? Probably, yeah, he could have. But I think there are other reasons as to why he didn't finish in the points. Would he have finished in the points if he was on a 2-stop? Or a 3-stop? I don't know. I honestly don't know. But he needs a points finish very, very soon. This weekend being another race where he needs to finish in the points. Because if we get to the Red Bull Ring or Silverstone and he still hasn't got a point on the board, then I think pretty much his confidence is just going to sink after that, because by then he would have had a few chances to finish in the points and it just wouldn't have happened. He needs a points finish desperately, and for me, he needs it because if he doesn't get a points finish by the Red Bull Ring race, which is the 3rd of July, or Silverstone, which I think is the 10th of July, if he still is pointless by then I would have to call him out and say that he's been very, very poor this season. Yes, the Haas car isn't great, but it's been good enough that he's had his chances already. So I'll give him another 3 or 4 races, but I am really not impressed by Mick so far this season. And for this weekend, they'll be in the fight for a point or two, but I don't think they'll be... I mean, they'll probably be better than AlphaTauri, who looked pretty bad, as we'll get into in a moment. They looked pretty bad this season, did AlphaTauri, but... yeah, I think they'll be somewhere fighting for the top 10, but most likely finishing outside of it with both cars. And you have to say Haas have already been kind of cut adrift in the championship. Now, getting on to AlphaTauri. And yeah, poor weekend, I think, for them, for what they needed after, bringing some upgrades. And their car looked pretty bad, I have to say. Yuki Tsunoda, though, great job by him to finish in the points, because I didn't think that was really possible. I thought AlphaTauri would be at best like a 12th or a 13th. I just didn't think they had the car really to compete with, a Haas who qualified well, or Alfa Romeo, or even McLaren Alpine. So, yeah, pretty good result there for Yuki Tsunoda. And I have to say, Tsunoda is having an underrated season, not been talked about that much, if at all, this season. He's been on par with Gasly so far this season, and you could argue he's been better than Gasly this season. Gasly has been complaining a lot about the car. I don't think the car really suits him well, but Gasly definitely not performing, at his best or anywhere near his capabilities. But yeah, great job by Tsunoda. Got to shout him out. Great job by him to finish in the points. He's currently the main man for them in the Drivers' Championship. He's 12th in the Drivers' Championship with Gasly, I think, in 13th. So, yes, Tsunoda, great by him, but AlphaTauri, yeah, the car is pretty poor at the moment. And I think AlphaTauri are pretty much out of it this season. Wouldn't be surprised if they finished 8th or lower in the championship, because, yeah, they just don't have the car, really, by the looks of it, to fight for... they just don't, by the looks of it, have a car that can really fight for points finishes on a consistent basis like we saw last season. Miami, Gasly looked good, but then ended up, getting hit by Alonso, and then we saw what happened after that. The only other race where they really were strongish contenders were Imola, where Tsunoda finished up in, was it 7th place, I think. Other than that, though, they've just not really featured this season, have they? They've just not really been that good. So yeah, disappointing season so far for AlphaTauri, and doesn't look like it's going to be getting any better. Now we'll go on to Aston Martin, or you could say Aston Martin Red Bull Racing, as many accusations that this car is the same as the Red Bull. And if you look at the upgrades they brought, it's basically a new car. It's a B car compared to what was what the Aston Martin car was in the first 5 races of the season. And yeah, many accusations about that. Of course, Aston Martin just begin working with Dan Fallows, who has joined from Red Bull. He officially started at Aston Martin in April, so plenty of accusations flying around. Red Bull accusing Aston Martin of possibly stealing their IP, possible downloading of data. I don't know how they're going to be able to prove that unless they absolutely, have clear evidence of that. I just don't see how they can prove that. It is suspiciously similar, but it didn't actually work, did it, for Aston Martin, because they were not that good. In the race, they weren't too bad. Sebastian Vettel, I thought, did pretty well to finish in 11th, and he wasn't too far away from finishing in the top 10. But yeah, wasn't really that great of a weekend for them. Both cars knocked out in Q1, so we'll have to see what the green Red Bull can do in Monaco. But to be honest, I don't think you're going to see this team probably show that great performance in Monaco. Probably more realistic, they'll show some better performance in Baku and Canada. Certainly two tracks where their drivers do perform well around. So, yeah, I think we'll see something better there for the Aston Martin team. And, yeah, we'll see if they can build on their position in the Constructors. But to be honest, the whole controversy about is it the Red Bull and are they now, got an unfair advantage compared to the rest of the teams if they have got a remarkably similar design? I expect that to die down, that type of talk, to be honest, because they didn't really show any extra pace in Barcelona than what we saw in Miami. In Miami, they were actually pretty quick this weekend, or not this weekend, but, the last weekend of the Grand Prix, they were actually not that quick at all. So, yeah, I don't expect this to be that big of a story unless they do have clear evidence that there is or there has been a breach of data or something like that. And finally, on to Williams. Yeah, Williams are pretty bad. Albon really struggling with the car handling. Latifi finally getting to grips with the car. Good to see that he had a good race and he did finish ahead of Albon, I think, on merit. So, yeah, good for Latifi. But, yeah, Williams really struggling around this circuit. To be honest, the only tracks this season where Williams are going to be able to... The only tracks they're going to be able to get anything from are tracks where there's a bit of an unusual type grip, conditions, safety cars, do you know what I mean? So, a non-safety car race around Barcelona doesn't exactly scream Williams points finish, does it? So, not surprised that they were by far the worst team in Barcelona. So that is, guys, all of the teams. I'll just quickly go back to... actually, before I go back to that, just going to quickly get into the championship standings. So let's get into the Drivers' Championship standings. Max Verstappen now leads the championship for the first time this season by 6 points from Charles Leclerc in second. Sergio Perez is third. Not too far behind Perez, only 25 points behind Max Verstappen. So if Verstappen starts to have some problems and Perez can improve his pace, you never know, could cause a bit of havoc there for the top two. But realistically, it is, of course, between Verstappen and Leclerc. So yeah, Perez then in third, Russell fourth, still doing very, very well. And Russell, only 36 points off the lead of the championship. If you had told me he'd be only that far behind with the type of car he's had this season, I would have laughed in your face, even though I know how good he is. Carlos Sainz fifth with 65 points, pretty poor season so far. Lewis Hamilton sixth, Lando Norris seventh, and then Bottas eighth, Ocon ninth, and Kevin Magnussen in 10th. And then Red Bull are now in the lead of the Constructors' Championship, and you can see they're now leading by 26 points. So they've got a decent lead over the Ferrari team. Ferrari in second, Mercedes third. Mercedes are still within 100 points of Red Bull, so they can improve their car quickly. You never know what could happen, but realistically, they are still fighting for third. And then McLaren are fourth. Alfa Romeo have closed the gap from, I think, was it 16 points or something like that, down to 11. Alpine also closing the gap on McLaren. They're now in sixth, or they still were in sixth. AlphaTauri in seventh. They, of course, gained a point. And then Haas in eighth. Aston Martin ninth. Williams 10th. The bottom four pretty much now cut adrift from the fight for the fourth place in the Constructors between McLaren, Alfa Romeo, and Alpine, which is going to be a pretty exciting fight, I have to be honest. Red Bull and Ferrari will be as well, but I think that McLaren, Alfa Romeo, Alpine fight will be pretty exciting too. But let me move on to these pictures, and I'll just quickly read out... shall I read out a couple more comments? Actually, I will in a moment. I just want to get on to one more thing because there was one more thing I wanted to get onto before coming to the last bit of the stream, and it was a bit of what do you call it? A bit of a fight ongoing between all of the teams in terms of the budget cap. So I just want to get a tweet up quickly on my end, and I'll show it on screen in a moment once I get it up, the full thread, because it is an interesting fight going on. And here we go. So let me just get my display capture up, and then I'll show you guys what I am talking about. Just give me like a few seconds. And hold on. Almost there. And there you go. So here is from, again, thank you, as always, to this Twitter account. Probably one of the best Twitter accounts in the F1 community for translating articles and just reporting news in general. Make sure that you follow them. Reporting on or translating this article from Auto, Motor and Sport, 7 F1 teams are demanding an inflation surcharge in the budget cap already this year. Otherwise, the development battle could end in June. So let's read through the thread. The top teams, these are quotes from the article. The top teams estimate about 10% of the allowed budget for the development of their cars, so around $14 million. Only the material costs for new parts are calculated. According to this calculation, Red Bull and Mercedes are already close to what they can theoretically spend on new parts in the development battle after the Spanish Grand Prix. An expert predicts, quote, if everyone plays it honest, there can be no further development after the Canadian Grand Prix. Another team boss says, or we'll have to dismiss 50 people. And then a quote from Christian Horner, then some teams won't be able to race in the last few races. In the first year of the budget cap, 145 million. The 10 teams coped well with the new limit, even if it was an effort for Ferrari, Mercedes and Red Bull. But this year, there are difficult factors. And then here are a couple of the factors given. New cars mean that you can take parts from last year over. The inflation is currently at 6.1%. Freight costs have doubled. Electricity and fuel raw materials have become more expensive. And that adds up to $8.4 million. Without inflation, the teams would have been able to keep up their their normal development schedule. The supporters of the inflation surcharge fear that some teams could overrun the budget by 5%. It would be a minor offence, and the penalty is determined by the sports commissioners. With luck, they'll get away with it if they also classify it as a force majeure, I think it's has pronounced. If it's not, then sorry about that. That can make or break a world championship. Anyone who adds 2 more upgrades, even though they don't have the budget for it, is getting a massive competitive advantage. There's also concern that costs are being hidden with tricks in other areas. Top teams fear that in this environment there'll be a lot of suspicions and accusations in the second half of the season that could hurt F1. And that is whenever someone shows up with new parts, even though they might be mathematically over the limit. Therefore, the top teams are asking the FIA and the F1 management to add an inflation surcharge to the budget already this year. Both support the request, but 8 teams need to agree. At the moment, Alfa Romeo, Williams and Alpine are against it. Haas is still split. Now, I read this and I did, some thinking, and even though, yes, inflation is going up across the world, I mean, in my country, inflation's gone up now to 9%. And it's going to go up even more. It's going to go up probably to another 3-4% probably this year. And that's me being generous, to be honest, given how, the cost of living crisis is going on in this country. But even though that is a problem, at the end of the day, that is more so a problem for normal people, working class people and middle class people. Maybe not upper middle class, but definitely people in the bottom half of the middle class, that is more so of a problem. The cost of living crisis, certainly in this country, and the inflation going up. And obviously for, middle class, say, businesses and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, and I think it might have been Otmar Safnauer who said this, I think maybe a day after this article came out, or the news came out about Christian Horner saying some teams won't be able to do the last few races. He basically said that, well, just spend less, and that he said that at the end of the day, Alpine, the reason they're against it is because they expected there to be some inflation this year, so they made the adjustments and, allocated some parts of their budget for certain things and made sure the budget was a certain number because they, anticipated inflation. And to be honest, if you are a business or an F1 team, if you did not expect or account for the inflation increase this year, this is just basic, economic analysis of what's going on at the moment. If you didn't anticipate that, then you're pretty stupid, because given what we've seen in the last couple of years, there was always going to be inflation, especially in this country with what's going on. And of course, every team is based in the UK, I think, except for two. But even like AlphaTauri, for example, have like a half base in England. So that's basically 8 teams. So at the end of the day, like I said, it was to be expected there would be inflation. But like Otmar said, I don't know if it was Otmar, I think it might have been, but it was definitely someone at Alpine said, at the end of the day, just spend less. And that's what my view or opinion of this is. These teams, they're not going to go broke. They are not going to go broke. Because now we have the budget cap, that we're not going to have a situation, I think, like, a Caterham or a Manor a few years ago, where teams are going broke, just simply trying to keep up with the rate of development in Formula One. And at the end of the day, these teams complaining, they should have accounted for it better. And they, at the end of the day, the budget cap, it's been set. They should have, again, accounted for inflation that was always going to go up across the world. And, they should have made those adjustments. And again, like Otmar said, spend less. If it's such a problem, then spend less. But if Liberty and F1, the people who run F1, if they decide to increase the budget cap, for me, it will be a bad decision, because it shows that the teams can come up with multitude of reasons, really, why they can, or how they can increase the budget cap. Because trust me, the big teams, and you noticed obviously Alfa Romeo, Alpine, and Williams and Haas. Well, Alpine, Alfa Romeo, and Williams are against it. Haas are like still 50-50. You notice obviously all the big teams are for it. The big teams do not want a budget cap, because the budget cap completely negates the advantage they had in development and spending power. Now, the only advantage they have is drivers and quality of team personnel. And they do still have a financial advantage over, say, teams like Williams and Haas, but it's nowhere near as big as it used to be before the budget cap. So they, of course, any reason they can find to increase the budget cap, they will. So for me, they should not increase it and, include a inflation surcharge. I don't believe they should at all. At the end of the day, spend less. It's not like these teams are going to go broke if they have to not spend as much as, say, they originally planned. And I know you saw there someone, or a quote from someone saying we might have to lay off 50 people. At the end of the day, yes, that is bad. But that is purely, that's not down to F1 from a financial perspective being unsustainable and being just way too hard to compete in financially, that's purely just a miscalculation in how much, budget they anticipated they would need for the year. So as far as I'm concerned, there should not be an increase in the budget cap. They should leave it as it is. If you're going to go over, or you fear you're going to go over, then just spend less. And that's it at the end of the day. I know people may say, oh, but let me just get off the display capture a minute. There you go. I know people may say, oh, but we don't want the development battle to end after the Canadian Grand Prix. I mean, it may be disappointing because we might not see teams, like certain teams, improving during a season, and it might stay a bit to the same. But what it will mean is that the teams will stay pretty much at a similar pace to where they were, and you won't see an increase in pace, and you won't see the field stretching apart and say a larger gap from the front to the back. It will stay a bit closer like it has been so far this season. So it won't actually be that bad of a thing. The only, I guess, negative is that, again, if no team develops after the Canadian Grand Prix, you could then see, say the order being a bit too predictable. But, I mean, the races this season haven't been great, but it has been pretty competitive, so I don't really see how it's going to be a problem, because I still think we're going to have pretty competitive races, and I think it'll be fine. I legitimately think it'll be fine. I don't think it's going to be, if that is the case, that no team really develops their car for the rest of the year. I don't think that's going to be a massive issue, to be honest. But let me know what you guys think in the chat. Everyone, or some people in chat, talking about football, I see. But yeah, let me know in the chat what you think about the whole budget cap situation. Let me see if there's any comments in the chat that I have possibly missed. Can't see any yet that I can read out. G Walker says Danny had aspirations of world champion, then Max was kicking ass and got the big contract. Danny took stage left. Well, at the end of the day, Ricardo, the decision he made was the wrong one. Should have stayed at the team. I mean, yeah, would he have been the main man at Red Bull? No, but I'd rather be number 2 driver at Red Bull than be number 1 at Renault or number 2 at McLaren right now. Let's see if there's any other comments here I can read out. A lot of it in chat, I will admit, it's just other people responding to others. Ricardo says, I mean, football is what's going down at the minute. Not really. I mean, the football season's pretty much over, isn't it? I mean, you've got the Champions League final on Saturday night, but except for that, the season's over, isn't it? And obviously this weekend, you got the Monaco Grand Prix. And then during the summer, June and July, we've got 6 F1 races. So it's going to be a great F1 summer, I think. But let me see if I can find anything else. No, I don't think I can. To be honest, this stream was only just about, just covering what I covered, of course, or what I should have covered on the Grand Prix on Sunday, but of course I couldn't because of my surgery. So yeah, I think we'll pretty much come to the end of the stream. Nope, not going to that. Go to this. Right, one final thing before I go. I will, by the way, announce this in text form on my community tab on my channel page, and also I will announce this in my Discord server. By the way, don't forget to join my Discord server, link below in the description. I will make sure to announce this also there. But I'm quickly just going to get into my schedule for this weekend. So tomorrow there'll be nothing. I'm having a day off just to continue to recover and all. And then Thursday night at 8 p.m. By the way, when I mention a time, it's all UK time, so just make sure you remember that. So at 8 p.m. on Thursday, I'm going to be doing a Monaco Grand Prix preview and getting into, hopefully, some more news with Formula 1 and the teams and drivers and all of that. So yeah, preview on Thursday night. And then, let me just make sure of the timings. By the way, I know people may think, oh, Monaco normally practices on a Thursday. That is not the case this year. Practice this year is on Friday. The normal practice 1, practice 2 is on Friday this year, thankfully. So, yeah, preview will be on Thursday night at 8 p.m. And then at 12:45 p.m. on Friday, I will be live for practice 1, for a practice 1 watch along. Then, again at 3:45 p.m., I'll be live for a practice 2 watch along. And then again at 8 p.m. that night, on Friday night, I'll be live for a qualifying preview. So on Friday, that is 3 streams. And then on Saturday, I'll be live at 11:45 a.m. for a practice 3 watch along. Then live again at 2:30 p.m. for a qualifying watch along. And then on Sunday, I'll be live 3 times that day for a race preview at 11 a.m. Then the race watch along starting at 1:30 p.m., half an hour before the race begins. And then the race reaction will be as soon as possible after the race finishes, probably about 30 to 45 minutes after the checkered flag falls in Monaco. And then Monday at 8 p.m. will be me going into some more, I guess, analysis of the Monaco Grand Prix and possibly getting more so into how things have changed in the season in the last couple races, because we have seen some couple changes in the order and obviously in the championship. So that is my schedule for this weekend. And again, I will announce that in text form probably on Thursday, I would say. I'll put it on the community tab so that anyone wanting to know what my schedule is can just go and check there. And again, I'll make sure to put it on Discord. So from Thursday night till Monday night, there will be 10 streams. That is a lot of content. Plus, probably about 2 or 3 days after the Monday stream, the day after the Monaco Grand Prix, I'm going to be doing another stream later that week as well. So there'll be actually 2 streams next week. One the day after the Monaco Grand Prix, of course, and then about 2 or 3 days after, like I said, covering a larger topic of the season, or a larger topic of a certain team, let's say, during this season. So even though I missed the Grand Prix weekend, there is plenty coming up on the channel. Don't worry about that. And of course, there are 6 races in June and July combined. So by the time we get to the summer break, there'll be plenty of content on this channel and regular content on this channel. So like I said, don't worry about the content schedule. There is plenty heading your way. And yeah, thanks to you guys for coming along to this stream, as I may as well come to the end here. And if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can subscribe right there. Again, make sure to subscribe for that content coming up this weekend for the Monaco Grand Prix. As well, smash the like button, share this video and channel everywhere you can. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5. And as well, don't forget to join my Discord server, link below in the description for more content like this. But guys, until my preview for the Monaco Grand Prix on Thursday night, then 2 days from now, it has been me, ChazHD. Goodbye.